Okay, I'm ready. Good evening. The Charter Township of Plymouth Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, January 28th, 2020 will come to order. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Heitman.
Here.
Trustee Dempsey. Clerk Borba here. Trustee Dorshevitz. Trustee Kermy.
Here.
Treasurer Clinton.
Here.
Supervisor Heising.
Here.
All present. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Pledge of Allegiance tonight. How about Representative Matt Kolazar leading us in the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, everybody. You are now officially in the safest place in Plymouth Township. Just want to let you know. But I know the real reason you're here is because everybody wants to find out what's in the dispatcher contract, right? No, it's a little inside humor there. Okay, tonight we are going to start with the Police and Fire Awards. I think Chief Phillips will be going first with the firefighters, and come on down.
Good evening, everybody. Township Board, thank you for having this event. My name is Dan Phillips. I'm the Fire Chief. Plymouth Township firefighters and police officers are on duty 365 days a year, 24 hours a day to protect you. Here are some examples of the professionalism and skill of your firefighters that have made a profound difference in the lives of our citizens. I'm going to be brief because we have a lot of items, and I respect your time, and I want to get my crews back on duty protecting you. So I'm going to begin with April 5th of 2018. Heart disease, as you know, is the leading cause of death, and we are seeing younger and younger people having heart issues. A 33-year-old delivery man collapsed at a nearby business in cardiac arrest. Lieutenant Jeff Randall, come on up, and firefighter Douglas Pickert arrived, began CPR, Doug, come on up, began CPR on the young man using their advanced skills and training, delivering a life-saving shock, restarting his heart, and taking the patient to the hospital where he had a full recovery. I believe full recovery. I'd like to present Jeff Randall and Lieutenant Jeff Randall and firefighter Douglas Pickert with a life-saving award. I thought I had them all in proper order. Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Stay right here. Oh, Doug, you can go.
And Chief, you can be available for photos out in the hallway too, when at the conclusion.
Absolutely.
Okay.
October 29th, 2018. Very early in the morning, a 49-year-old female went into a cardiac arrest. Lieutenant Jeff Randall and firefighter Drew Loudon. Come on up, Drew. Hey, by the way, when I call your name, that's cue. Come on up. Arrived, diagnosed the patient, began advanced life support care. After administering numerous medications and, again, shocks to the patient, they restored her heartbeat. En route to the hospital, she continued to grow stronger and show improved signs of life. She was delivered to St. Mary's Hospital for care and recovery. Again, I'd like to give Lieutenant Jeff Randall and firefighter Drew Loudon a life-saving award. Thank you, sir. I told you I will try to be as quick as I can because I know we have a lot. Now we go into the last year, 2019. A stroke is extremely uncommon in a 43-year-old female patient. Is Adam here? Adam Gwynn is not here? All right. He can't make it today. A 43-year-old female employee felt ill and walked into the bathroom where she collapsed. She was found later unconscious by her coworkers. Firefighter Adam Gwynn arrived on scene and immediately recognized the important signs telling him that she was a 43-year-old female was having a stroke. He also realized that she needed to get to the hospital quick where they could give her definitive care and get her medicine in a specific time frame that could save her. They quickly, decisively got her to St. Mary's Hospital, where she has made a full recovery and is still working in this community right now. So I also give a life-saving award to firefighter Adam Gwynn, who is not here today. Okay, now I have a big group. Last year, January 17th, 2019, it's 32 degrees outside. A 22-year-old contractor is working on a tractor trailer. He is repairing, I believe, the refrigerating system or in the trailer, when another employee decides he's going to jump into this tractor trailer and he's going to back it up and he's going to hook it up to the semi. Backing it up, he pulls the contractor down in between the two drive axles and the dual wheels, pinning him in between four tires. A horrific accident, which, to make matters worse, he is pinned between heavy truck tires where no person should ever be on a bitterly cold day in January. Teamwork, problem solving, careful, deliberate, and methodically, Platoon 3, comprising of Battalion Chief Scott Gross, Lieutenant James Harrell, Lieutenant Jeff Murray Malari, Firefighter Christopher Smith, Firefighter Christopher Haller, and Firefighter Nick Hansen, over the course of 2 hours, dismantled this truck and extricated him from between these tires. They then transported him to St. Mary's Hospital for recovery. This was a horrific accident. I'm giving Platoon 3 a unit citation for their exemplary work in removing this patient from a horrible, horrible situation. My time is good. May 3rd, 2019. Man calls 911 for a 67-year-old wife who's having difficulty breathing. Asks for the fire department to get there quickly. She's having a hard time. Before we arrive on scene, she stops breathing. She collapses. Her heart stops. The fire department arrives to find her pulseless, not breathing. CPR was initiated. Life-saving medications and cardiac defibrillation were administered. Nolan here? Firefighter Nolan Gilo, who is not here, successfully resuscitated this woman, regained pulses, and transported her to St. Mary's Hospital, where she made a recovery. When I started this job in the 80s, CPR was something you did that you didn't always expect it to work. Today, our firefighters here in this community expect to save their patients when they begin CPR. And as you can see, we've got many occurrences now where they are successful and people return to their lives with minimal problems. So again, I'm going to present firefighter Nolan Gilo with a life-saving award. And I promised to be brief, and I was only about 10 minutes, so.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Tom, it's up to you.
Congratulations, everybody from the fire department. We appreciate all your hard work and your dedication to public service. Thank you.
No, the small.
Mr. Supervisor. It embarrassed me. Thanks, Jerry. Thank you for allowing us to do this evening. Looking around the room, this room hasn't been this crowded probably in the last 5 years. When it was this crowded, it certainly wasn't for this reason. So we certainly appreciate the board and not only the dedication that you show here each and every week during board meetings, but also for the support that you provide to our public safety officers. We really could not do our jobs without this support, so we appreciate that. In today's society, the term hero is used far too frequently. We overuse it for movie stars, politicians, professional athletes, and while such individuals might have unique abilities, they are not our true heroes. Tonight, I proudly share with you our department's award recipients. They and countless others throughout the country like them are perhaps our true heroes. Those before you tonight have demonstrated professionalism under the most trying of circumstances and have shown dedication to duty. At this point, I'm going to ask Lieutenant Kuja to come up and make the award presentations. Make sure you use the right hand.
Thank you, Chief. I, too, like the fire chief, I'm going to try and keep it brief. However, I have twice as many incidents to go over. So we'll see what we can do. Guys, if I call your name, feel free to come on up and receive your awards. Officer Matthew Brothers, who is not here today, he is on vacation at Disney World, and Joshua McLean, if you could come up. Both of these officers responded to an address on Russell Drive after hearing the fire department dispatched on a medical run involving a male subject who was not breathing and possibly in cardiac arrest. Officer Brothers and McLean arrived on scene and found the male subject's wife performing CPR. They evaluated the subject and determined that he was not breathing and had no pulse. The officers took over CPR from the wife and continued until FD personnel arrived on scene. When the fire department arrived on scene, they were able to defibrillate the subject, at which time they were able to regain a pulse and transport him to the hospital for further treatment. According to FD personnel who actually put these officers in for this award, these officers were instrumental in saving this subject's life. So, Officer McLean. And Officer McLean is going to stay put because him and Officer Brothers are our life-saving dynamic duo here. Later on that same year, in 2018, both officers, McLean and Officers Brothers, responded to an address on Postiff Drive after hearing the fire department dispatched on a medical run involving a female subject who was not breathing. Officer Brothers and McLean arrived on scene and found the subject unconscious on her kitchen floor with her skin turning blue. The officers evaluated the subject and determined that she was not breathing and had no pulse. They took turns performing CPR on the subject, and eventually they were able to get a pulse and some faint breathing. Fire department personnel then arrived on scene and transported the subject to the hospital for further treatment. And again, according to FD personnel, the officers' actions were instrumental in saving this person's life. If I could have Officer Rip, Detective Hinkle, and Officer McLean. Sorry, I let you go too soon. All right, Officer McLean is going to accept this for all of them. At 3:51 in the morning on March 29th, 2018, the Livonia Police Department was in pursuit of two breaking and entering subjects who had attempted to burglarize a gun store in the city of Livonia. The subjects were interrupted by the store owner and shots were fired. Livonia's pursuit ended when the subject vehicle crashed on southbound I-275 near Ann Arbor Road. One suspect was taken into custody by Livonia at the scene, while the other fled westbound into our subdivision in the vicinity of Terry Street and Butternut, right over here across from the Township Hall. These officers quickly responded to the area. They were working the midnight shift at the time. They set up a perimeter, and a short time later, Officer McLean observed the suspect in the neighborhood, and a foot pursuit ensued. He was chased down in a coordinated effort by the officers mentioned, and he was arrested without incident. So those officers involved there were awarded the Departmental Unit Commendation. If I could have Police Service Aide Rodriguez and Police Service Aide Andrea Bosworth come up to the front, please. These two members of our dispatch crew are going to be presented with a Community Service Award, and that award is awarded to employees who have contributed a valuable service to the community through their performance. Police Service Aides Rodriguez and Bosworth organized and staffed the first Plymouth Community Communications Center 911 table at the fire department's open house in 2018. Both PSAs coordinated their efforts with the fire department personnel. designed the program and spent time that day teaching 911 to children from Plymouth Township and surrounding communities. Both of these PSAs took on this extra work on their own and without receiving any additional compensation. So we've rewarded them with the Community Service Award. Stay right where you are. Police Service Aide Bosworth here also was nominated and selected by the awards committee to be our 2019 Civilian Employee of the Year over in the police department. She's demonstrated exceptional dedication and community service to the police department in the year 2019. She's participated in several community outreach programs that allow dispatchers to teach children about 911. She coordinates her efforts well with the fire department to make sure that the township has a clear and understandable message for children attending the fire open house. She's also been instrumental in organizing her fellow police service aides to read to children and schools this upcoming March for March's Reading Month. Although a relatively new employee, she's quickly become a training officer within the dispatch center. Her professionalism was demonstrated on a 911 call last May when PSA Bosworth, with a calm, clear, and empathetic tone, instructed a female over 911 who was suicidal and holding a knife to herself to go ahead and put that knife down prior to officers arriving. She kept the female engaged by using her name and praising her choice to let the knife go before the officers arrived on scene. And as a result, the situation was calmly and very coolly brought to a conclusion. So for that, just an example of why she was selected as the Civilian of the Year. And you'll be hearing about that later as well. All right, if I could have Officer Wilder and Officer Champagne, if he's here, come up to the front. Officer Wilder and Officer Champagne responded to an address on Wildwood Court for a report of a male resident who had collapsed while watching television with his wife. The officers responded quickly to the scene and they located the victim unconscious and without a pulse. The officers worked together to perform CPR on the subject, and due to their actions, his pulse and breathing returned. The subject was transported to the hospital by fire department personnel, and from what I understand, he did make a recovery. So for that, these officers were selected by the award committee for the department's life-saving award. Officer Aaron Waring. Officer Waring was selected by the award committee to be awarded the Department Certificate of Merit, which is actually a very high award. It's awarded for outstanding performance of duty under unusual or difficult conditions, and the actions of the officer, they don't have to involve exposure to physical danger, but they must involve unusual thoroughness, conscientiousness, determination, and initiative. In December of 2018, Plymouth Township officers responded to a report of a home invasion on Rolston Drive. Officer Waring, who was working that day, is one of our evidence technicians, and he processed the scene. Officer Waring was able to locate a single fingerprint on the underside of a doorknob. That fingerprint was collected and it was sent off to the lab and was utilized to get a positive identification on a subject who we believe committed that home invasion. We tracked that subject down, and in his possession we found some property that belonged to another township resident. We made that resident's location, and they found that her home had just been burglarized. The resident actually came home while the officers were on scene and said that her home had been burglarized within the last 2 hours. Because of these actions, we were able to recover that second victim's jewelry that had been stolen from her home, and just the attention to detail that Officer Waring utilized when he processed the scene in the initial home invasion, his thoroughness while lifting the suspect's fingerprints, all led to the closure of 2 home invasions and the recovery of 2 different township residents' property. So for that, he is awarded the Certificate of Merit. Two more. If I could have Andrea Bosworth come back up. The incident mentioned before during her Civilian of the Year speech, the female who called 911, actually the young female's father called reporting that his daughter had made suicidal statements. Police Service Aide Bosworth was able to establish contact with that female, kept her on the phone, gathering scene and officer safety information for the responding police units. She learned that the female was in possession of a knife, and throughout the call spoke with the female and attempted to convince her to put the knife down. She was able to convince that female to put the knife down prior to the officer's arrival. She demonstrated a high degree of professionalism and empathy throughout the call and was able to help us bring that situation to a peaceful resolution. So for that, the awards committee is awarding PSA Bosworth an individual commendation from the department. All right, this next one has a lot of people. Assistant Chief John Brothers, myself, Sergeant Stephen Koffel, Officer Jason Ripp, Detective Charlie Rosem, Detective Mike Hinkle, Officer Jeff McParland, Officer Caitlin King, Officer Jeff Maples, Police Service Aide Stephanie Smith, and Police Service Aide Cassandra Bulmer. This is a departmental unit commendation, and it is awarded to all of the officers named here as a result of an incident that occurred in August of 2019 when Officer McParland fell in behind an occupied stolen vehicle operating southbound on Haggerty Road right out in front of the building here. As soon as Officer McParland fell in behind the vehicle, the driver abruptly pulled into a driveway, exited the vehicle, and fled on foot. The subject fled into the backyards of several residences on Orange Lawn Street. Officer McParland kept dispatch informed of his situation, and the other listed police department personnel flooded the area and quickly set up a perimeter. Police Service Aide Bulmer and Smith did an excellent job of handling the large volume of police department radio traffic while simultaneously soliciting assistance from Livonia PD and from the Michigan State Police to get their K-9 units rolling our way. They also fielded numerous phone calls from residents reporting sightings of a fleeing suspect running through their backyards. Police units on scene were able to communicate effectively and efficiently to tighten their perimeter each time that dispatch would relay a new sighting of the suspect. The suspect was eventually located hiding in a garden shed in the backyard of a home on Orange Lawn. In addition to being in possession of a stolen vehicle, the subject was learned to have had several warrants for his arrest out of multiple jurisdictions. The quick thinking, effective communication, and exceptional teamwork displayed by all parties involved in this incident led to the arrest of a wanted criminal and the recovery of a stolen vehicle. Numerous residents in the area who witnessed the actions that day called the station and commented to command officers on the scene in person about how impressed they were with the professionalism and actions of all parties involved. So for that, everybody listed was selected to receive a departmental unit commendation by the awards committee. "15 minutes with twice as many as Dan just wanted. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. For everybody who's here from the police department and fire department, again, thank you for being with us this evening. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. We all also up here at the board want to recognize the family members who are here tonight as well. It is a team effort, and we also deeply appreciate the sacrifice that family makes for our first responders. It's truly a team effort, and we are very grateful for your service and sacrifice on behalf of your families. With that, okay. Okay, Chiefs, anything else? Okay. Unless you're really fascinated by the special assessment district process. Yeah, I know how to clear a room, right? Okay.
It is. It is.
Couple seconds here.
It is. I have a thing.
Okay, let's move on to item C. That's the approval of the agenda. Any comments or questions?
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Clerk.
I move for the approval of the agenda for Tuesday, January 28th, 2020.
Motion's made by Clerk Vorva. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Heitman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next is item D, approval of the consent agenda. Comments or questions by the board?
I have proposed a couple changes to the minutes. Just with regard to item 4 on page 4, the draft that came out seemed to record public comments after the action, and that didn't comport with my recollection. I didn't go back and look to verify, but I think, as usual, Mr. Supervisor, you asked for comments, people gave comments, and then we acted. So
Okay.
shifting those around, and then on page 6, I proposed a change to my comments to try and make it a little bit more intelligible than what was drafted. So with those, I'm comfortable with the minutes.
Okay. Anything else under item D?
Oh.
Yeah.
No, not the minutes.
Well, yeah, this is all under item D, so.
All right. He's not here, the chief. We can do it later. I just wanted him to go through page 29 and do a little explanation on
Okay.
receivables for transports.
Well, let's just
We can
hold.
wait till he comes back.
Let's hold off on that one. We'll get to it when he gets back in. Anything else under item D?
Let's take yours another step further, Chuck, and also talk about the write-offs for the year.
Yeah, that whole package. It's 67 on the PDF and 29, or part of it is. It's about 3 pages.
Okay, just make a note somewhere. Anything else under item D?
Yes, Chief, I was looking at the police report, and I noticed that the overall crime rate in the township has dropped. So I want to compliment the police department on that. One thing I did note is that traffic accidents were up this year. Was that more of a adverse weather during those time periods that they were higher?
Traffic. Yeah, the accidents will fluctuate based on the weather. You might see a spike in certain months, but I can't say that there's one specific area or one reason that's causing the accidents. I think it's more weather-related.
Thank you. And again, thank you for the good work for the police department for keeping the crime rate low.
Thank you, Clerk.
Okay, anything else under item D? I promise we will revisit once the chief gets back, but otherwise, can I have a motion to approve? Mr. Heitman? Oh, okay, seconded by trustee, I'm sorry, made by trustee Heitman, seconded. Anybody second?
Second.
Second by clerk Kavorva. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, before we get to item E, we do have our state representative Matt Kolazar here with us this evening. Really quick, if you got anything for us.
Thank you, Board, for having me here tonight. Just the most recent legislation I want to go over that is an update is you may have heard about the legalization of sports betting here in Michigan. So just a couple quick details on that. Basically, sports books are now legal in casinos, and basically any wagers that are made thereafter, payouts are done for anyone's winnings. 8.4% is the tax rate that goes to the state. Also, online wagering is also now allowed, and on internet poker and games like that, you're talking about 20 to 28%, depending on the game, of a tax rate. And what this is expected to generate is about $20 million for the school aid fund, as well as the state's first responder fund as well. This makes Michigan the 20th state to allow sports wagers and the 5th to allow online gaming. So that was the most recent bipartisan legislation that we had go through with a number of other things that we've done this year that I've talked about in previous meetings. In addition, the state of the state is tomorrow, and I give you a little quick preview of that. The governor is expected to address 3 things mainly, which are roads, healthcare, and education. It's supposed to be a very short one, like 25 minutes is the estimate for tomorrow night, so it won't take up too much time. And as far as we know from roads, she's expected to reveal a plan for a non-legislative solution to fixing our trunk lines. So an M and I or a US, and she's going to focus on those, which means our community roads are still going to be in some rough shape, but she's going to focus on those first. So with that, I'll learn more with all of you tomorrow, because that's what we were had revealed to us. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any quick questions for?
Yes. So, Representative, I noticed there was a poll taken in which it appeared that people said they would be more comfortable if road spending was brought closer down to the voter, local control, as opposed to, say, MDOT. And as you well know, our experience with MDOT here in this community is less than stellar with regard to the intersection at McClumph and Ann Arbor Road. So I just wondered if you had any comments about that idea, that maybe more local control over road repairs might be a good idea.
Well, I think that we've seen a lot of that. Canton's a good example, who had their roads millage that was passed, and they took it into their own hands to have it done. So, I mean, I think we're seeing that being a trend that's going around the state. And also, as we know, Ann Arbor Road, McClumph has been, I know, a pain in the neck, but hopefully here very soon, hopefully within the next few months, we will finally get to that point where we have our stoplight there.
Okay, anything else? Gary, did you have
Which
something?
roads are the trunk roads?
Like I said, anything with an M&I or a US, so the ones right top of the mind locally, you think of Ann Arbor Road, for example, would qualify as one. Ford Road being a really obvious one that is in really rough shape. Those are two that come to mind right away.
Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you very much. We also have Commissioner Melissa Daub here with us tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Good evening, Supervisor and Trustees. I just have a quick update on the sanitary sewer service agreement between Wayne County and Western Township Utility Authority, WTUA. I know some of us spoke about this yesterday at the MITC meeting, but I just wanted to let you know that the Committee on Public Services did vote to approve that new agreement, and the agreement and the termination agreement to get everything going. So it was approved in committee today. It'll go to full board next Thursday. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be approved.
And for the boards, that is the so-called swap agreement that we have with the WTUA communities and Wayne County. That is the last chapter in our separation from Wayne County's sewer system.
Yes.
And that affected MITC?
No, she was at the meeting, and she made an announcement at that point as well. Okay, all set?
Yes.
Any
thank you.
questions for Melissa? No? Okay,
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
thanks. Let's go back to item D real quick. We had some questions for Chief Phillips. Chuck and
The
Gary.
receivables, the
What page?
write-offs, it should be 68, approximately 68. I'd like some explanation on,
Are you in the December or in the year-end report?
I think we want to talk about complete year.
Excuse me.
I thought it was 68
This
on
one?
the PDF.
67 is the credit report.
I'm not sure where you're at.
There's an aging is on 68 and 67, where the total is $236,393.
Yeah.
Yes, if you'll, and the very beginning of that, it says money accounted for. So that 200 and, you said it was on 60. Let me get to that page.
67 of the PDF.
Yeah.
That's what's on, I think we have it up
Bottom
there
line,
too.
yeah.
This page?
Light up a little bit.
That is an accounting of the money, because we want to be able to account for all the money that we build out. So that dollar figure also includes adjustments made for reductions in Medicare and reductions to, the rate Blue Cross pays. So it includes that, so it counts for all dollars.
So this is before write-offs and before reductions for Blue Cross, or it is after reductions for Blue Cross?
After.
The 230s?
After.
After, all right.
So the total write-offs is $35,365.15 that we wrote off.
Where is that? What page is that on?
It's page 67. It's all the write-offs on the very bottom. It's for the year. Those last 7 lines total
Oh,
$35,000.
W/O, small balance?
Yeah, write off
Yeah.
bad
Oh,
debt,
WO
write off
for everything.
bad
Right.
debt per management, bankruptcy. 24,000 is still in collections. When it shows that here, this has gone from MHR Billing, who is our billing company, to Merchants and Medical, which is our collections company. So the vast majority of that 24,000 is has been sent over to Merchants and Medical. Now, once there's going to be a lot of dollar figures that are lost due to bad addresses, patients that expired, and that you just cannot collect from.
This is we account on a cash basis in this account. So what I'm trying to find out is how much did we actually collect in the calendar year of 2019? Maybe it's not in here.
It's not in this year-end report. It's in a different report. The actual cash accrual is kept in the township in the treasurer's office because in his office we actually account for the actual dollar cash we get in.
Okay, so can we have that information emailed to us?
Yes, I will get that to you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Also, remember the invoice for the truck accident?
It was invoiced out. It has not been paid as of yet.
Just send it to me, so I'd like to look at what they look like.
Oh, okay.
For that emergency recovery of that accident on
Yep.
eastbound
275 or
M14.
And one other thing, Chief, I notice on our mutual aid, I won't even go into the 84% with Canton.
What page are you on? Or
Page 39 of 143, the year-end report. We get a lot of Northville Township, but looking at the data, I find that there are some City of Plymouths in there. Does it behoove us at all to separate out the City of Plymouth, knowing down the road we may want to know, what difference the City of Plymouth was versus Northville Township itself?
you mean Northville City versus Plymouth City?
Well, we got Northville Township, we've got mutual aid, a great deal of it going to Northville Township. But if
That's
we look
correct.
at them, the addresses are all in Plymouth City.
So you want Northville City and Plymouth City separated because they are the same system?
Well, yeah, what happens down the road if we enter an agreement with Plymouth City?
Right.
We'd like to know how much time are we spending with Plymouth City today versus
Right.
Northville Township, but it's not really Northville Township.
Northville City.
so you
No, we're
said,
putting it under Northville Township today.
so then it's misbinned, because Northville Township should not be binned
No,
as
exactly.
Northville City.
No, it shouldn't. And they're two separate line items. Are you saying the individual address?
Yes,
What
the
page is that on?
individual addresses are Plymouth City.
I will review that and get back to you on that.
So,
So
page was
in
that?
the month of December, the company that manages this, what they did is we had plugged in what departments we use ourselves. And the CFERs decided that they were going to, on their own, add every single fire department in the state of Michigan into the report. So what you'll see in here is you'll see Northville Township listed twice because there's two options, and I have to go in and manually remove the second one. But, we now have Alma, Michigan in our drop-down box. It's just what they did in December.
Okay, cool.
okay, so I want to go back to Gary's original question because it's Northville City and Plymouth City that have a joint fire department. And I think what Gary is asking for is for those two to be separated, right? Or no?
Yeah, if we
Yeah.
we
Okay,
can
that's
just
what I
see
thought he meant.
Plymouth City
I would
separate.
I would suspect that we're giving a lot more service to Plymouth City than Northville City.
Exactly.
But Northville City is the lead agency
Right.
for their joint fire service. We've seen this in other areas. We've seen this with insurance, where people in Plymouth City are getting hit with Northville City insurance rates.
There you go.
Because the people who do this, it's not a slam, but they don't know all the intricacies of some of these mutual aid and service agreements that some of these communities have. Okay.
If it's an easy thing to do, Chief, it might be worthwhile long-term for us.
If you turn to page 51 of 143, you'll see at the top it's titled City of Northville Fire Department. But if you quickly run down the list, you'll see most of those addresses are, for the mutual aid given, are in the city of Plymouth.
Yeah, I see
Because
that.
the city of
and
Northville
Davis, yeah.
Is the
Fire
lead
Department
agency.
handles the city of Plymouth.
Right.
Okay.
And it's very easy for me to separate those two.
Okay.
Wait, though,
Thank you.
some of these are in Plymouth Township.
That's for mutual aid received.
Received, yeah.
So if you look over to
Received.
the
Yeah,
That is them coming to
Very
help
top,
us.
Okay, given his,
So like, I know you noticed Turtle Head Court.
Yeah.
That's definitely in the township.
Cool. Thanks, Chief.
Okay, all set? Great, all right. We've already approved item D, Chief, so we're going to move on to item E, public comments and questions. We have two different public comment sections during the meeting, one at the beginning and one at the end. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. We also encourage individual questions on individual agenda items as long as they are germane to that particular topic. So that being said, anybody want to come up at this point on anything? Very good, then. We are going to move along to new business. This is item F1, the Litchfield SAD hearing of assessment. Mr. Felrath and Mr. Zakoff.
Public hearing.
Yeah, I know it's the public hearing, but we need to get them up here anyway. Okay, so then this is a public hearing. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
so
Mr. Heitman. All right, is there a second? Second by Clerk Vorva. We're going to have to take a roll call on this. Well, let's do that after we do the roll call. Yes.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dorshevitz.
yes,
Clerk Borba, yes. Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman. Motion carries.
Okay, we are now in a public hearing at 7:41 p.m. for the purpose of the Litchfield, what we call the Litchfield SAD hearing of assessment. Please give us an update on what's this is all about. And also, gentlemen, I would ask that you look at, board members, also keep an eye on item F2 because these two are very closely related. This is basically the public hearing for item F2.
Correct.
Mr.
Thank you.
Felrath.
So tonight is the public hearing of assessment. It's the final public hearing for the proposed special assessment district to reconstruct the roads in the Plymouth Notch subdivision, namely Litchfield Drive and Litchfield Court. So the objective of the public hearing is the board is requested to approve the resolution which establishes the district and approve the assessment roll, subject to the legal review. The assessment roll is attached. All the units, the 30 units within the subdivision, are proposed 1 unit of benefit, so they all share equally the project cost. The project cost has been more or less firmed up. We have a contract award for this project immediately following this public hearing of assessment. So that price is reflected in there. We're within the 10% of the original estimate that was presented to the residents back during that first public hearing. The first public hearing of necessity, excuse me. The level of support hasn't changed. We're still, let's see, what's that say? Around above 65, around 65%, both in terms of units and front footage. So we have, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If not, please proceed.
Okay, so at this point, does the board have any questions? Does the public have any questions? This is the public hearing portion. We're going to need you to come up to the microphone. Yeah, you have to come up to the microphone, state your name, and we will hold you to 3 minutes, too.
Are you going to give us the dollar amount of the contractor award tonight? You said it's within 10%, but what is that actual dollar amount?
Yes, that's included here in the assessment roll. The total dollar amount.
Which is in item F2, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the contract award for construction will be included in the next agenda item. But the assessment roll here does tally the total project cost of $963,000. And if you deduct the Wayne County contribution, the remaining cost is equally shared among the 30 lots, totaling $574,000, thereabouts. The per unit cost is approximately $19,137.07. Correct. Yes.
And 7 cents.
And 7 cents, right.
Bob will pay that, all right? Okay. Okay, any other questions from the public? Comments or questions before we close the public hearing? All righty, then I'm going to make a motion that I would need a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Clerk.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Motion's been made by Clerk Vorva. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Heitman. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dorshevitz.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman. Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Motion under the public hearing has been closed at 7:45 p.m. We're going to move on to item F2. This is adoption of the Litchfield Drive Reconstruction Special Assessment District and Assessment Roll. Gentlemen, do you have any further comments on this? Could you just briefly explain what this does for us? What
Again,
is it?
this is to approve the resolution establishing the district and to approve the assessment role. This is still part of the public hearing?
No,
Okay.
it's not part of the public.
Well, then the board is requested now just to approve the resolution and to approve the assessment role.
Okay, comments or questions by the board?
Just a
Mr.
quick
Kern?
question.
Yep.
On this roll, the assessment roll, where there's only one name, that's because there's only one name on the title, correct?
They probably took it from the tax records, which
Yeah,
don't necessarily mean it's on the deed.
There's only one owner?
Yes.
We'll have to confirm. I don't know off the,
I believe what Chuck said is correct. They pull this from the assessor's database, which may only list one in the tax records and the assessing records, which is not necessarily what's on the deed at Wayne County.
And we required all owners to do it when they did the,
Right.
right.
How do you know who the owners are if it doesn't match the deed?
Well, you pull the record.
So that's what this is?
Well, no, sometimes the tax record will only have one person, but in our system, but the deed at Wayne County will have everyone.
Right, but
listed.
who's tracking it by the names and how?
The assessors and the clerk's department.
So why would the tax record only have one name?
Sometimes it's just put on that way, and sometimes people will change, add someone to it later on,
To a quit claim?
to a quit claim or something like that. We move to a trust or life estate, so
But
they
normally,
can
when
change.
somebody purchases a property, they come into the assessor's office and they file a property transfer affidavit,
Yeah.
and that's the name that's on the property transfer affidavit as the owner.
Even though there may be more people that have a deed interest.
Or that have an interest,
Right.
yeah.
The last name on there, Duda, one of those spouses is deceased for a while, Dolores. You might want to check into it.
Well, once someone's deceased, if they have a deed joint, it goes automatically to the other person.
Right, so even though that person didn't sign, in that case, you'd only need one signature.
You only need one because
But you don't know that from that list, you see, that's my point.
Can't get the
yeah.
second one.
that may just shows that's just what's showing up on our roll. It doesn't mean.
Okay, any other questions by the
yes.
board?
So has there been opposition to this? I mean, there's 2/3 that have signed the petition. Has there been opposition from anyone? And if so, to what degree?
At least 1/3.
well, other than the people that didn't sign the petition, you assume they're not for the project. I haven't heard any appeals or any vocal complaints that came to me directly. No.
I think we've had some concerns raised at previous meetings, but other than that, I have not heard anything, and
Neither have I.
we haven't received any formal appeals or complaints or anything like that.
And I
Yeah.
assume a major factor here is because there's almost $400,000 of
County money.
that's going into this project, which is a huge benefit. The other thing is on the equal assessment. Could you explain again why it's equal per property?
Versus frontage.
This is just, we're continuing to conduct the SADs like we have always. This is the way that the township has proposed it.
So,
We initially proposed it to all the residents during the informational meetings. This is the process we have already used. Unless directed otherwise by the board, I continue to illustrate to the residents, everyone receives one equal unit of benefit. That's how the benefit's been defined.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to that is because everyone's considered to get equal benefit.
Correct. Yes,
Certainly
that's
on
what
that
I
road,
try to
yeah.
convey to them.
so in this case, there's no separate private drives, there's no condo association, there's no unique circumstances. It's these units are on one street with courts, and they all have the same benefit from the reconstruction of this entire street. That's essentially why it's
Correct.
being proposed in equal fashion.
That is correct. They all have to use the road to.
Litchfield Drive is the only exit onto McClumpha.
That's one of the
That's
reasons
correct.
it's more expensive. It's a dead end.
Yeah.
Harder to,
But again, with only one and some of them, I mean, we're sure we don't have any battle of the spouses issues out there where one wanted to sign and the other didn't.
No, if the spouse didn't sign it, it wouldn't be counted as a signature.
But on here, okay, I don't know of any specific cases. I'm just asking the question.
She's dead.
Okay.
are there any homes currently for sale?
Does anybody in the neighborhood know of any homes that are for sale? No signs up, yeah.
Road's too bad.
Okay.
The new owner's name is on that list.
But the old owner voted no, so. No, because we have to do this at the time of the
Petition.
petition. Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
They may get a surprise if they're real estate or
Well-
Caveat emptor.
That's right.
They've been noticed up, so. Okay, all set? Board members, any other questions for Mr. Felrath? Any other questions or comments from the public? Yes, sir.
No, we are not.
No need to.
So I'm with OHM Advisors. We'll be administrating the project through construction, doing the inspection. We'll certainly be communicating with the residents prior to the project and during. We may start with a mailer, or we may start with a door hanger, but you'll certainly be contacted and know generally the process, the schedule, all that. Yeah, and we will. We always work with one main contact. Yeah. Yeah, through email. We'll come up with a efficient communication process. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'm looking for a motion now.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Clerk.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2020-01-28-08, authorizing the establishment of the Litchfield Drive Reconstruction SAD and confirming the assessment roll as presented, subject to providing a 30-day period to permit any person having interest in real property to file a written appeal with a special assessment with the Michigan Tax Tribunal and subject to the final approval of the Township Assessor.
Second.
Motion's been made by Clerk Vorbis, seconded by Trustee Kermy, I believe. Is that true? Okay. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Clerk Vorba, yes. Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yep.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Next is item F3. This is the Litchfield SAD Award of Bid. Mr. Felrath.
Thank you. We solicited public bids, and I'll have George from OHM Advisors speak to the recommendation, since his firm actually tabulated and reviewed and recommended the lowest responsive bidder.
On December 17th, the township received 7 bids on the project. Low bid in the amount of approximately $803,000 to a high bid in the amount of $991,000. Our engineer's estimate was approximately $810,000, so the range came in as expected. We proceeded with our due diligence on the low bid contractor. If you may recall, this is the same contractor that was recently awarded the General Drive project. So we were already familiar with the contractor. We had done our due diligence already. We did take one additional step, and we met with the contractor to talk about, the means and methods and schedules to build both projects, because that was one of our concerns. They did give us a comfort level that they could handle both projects, and actually the proximity of them was one of the reasons they went a little more aggressive after Litchfield once they were awarded General Drive. So we have a comfort level that they can build both projects within the contract timelines, and we're therefore recommending you award the contract to Mark Anthony.
Is there anyone here from Mark Anthony? Okay.
So why was it 803,000 instead of the 940 something? It was 540, was the assessment? And
Oh,
then
because of the Wayne County local initiative. So we backed off the 388,000.
388?
Yeah.
That's still 920.
Well, you have to add, this is construction costs, so we add in all the design,
Engineering,
bidding,
all the other
inspection,
costs, yeah.
come up with the total project cost, then we back off the 388.
It's in there
Got it.
someplace. Yeah,
Okay.
it's in there.
Okay.
I have a question about the contract. Does it have some kind of holdback for remedial issues that might crop up afterwards?
Yeah, 10% is typically what we retain through the project until we do a punch list inspection, then we usually slowly release that retainage until we're satisfied.
And does that process include citizen residential input so that
Well, typically we coordinate with the project champion, the lead from the community.
the HOA president or whatever?
Correct, or whoever the champion is for the SAD, and typically it is HOA.
Well, I don't want typically. Does this contract
So I
say that?
said typically it is the HOA president, but not always. It could be whoever's designated.
Okay.
But whoever that person is, we will keep them in the loop for the whole project.
You will?
Absolutely.
So before the contractor gets the final penny, the residents are going to be able to say, yeah, it's great, we're fine, all the problems have been fixed.
We communicate through that point of contact. We don't talk to each resident in the community, but we communicate through.
But you do have a process to make sure that the homeowners
Are satisfied.
are part of the process so that we don't release the contractor independent of what the homeowner's input is, correct?
Correct.
That's in the contract, or that's just your
It's not
practice?
in the contract, but it's our process.
Okay, and you'll do that here?
We will.
Great.
Is that an OHM process only?
That's typically, when you do SADs and there's communication, it should be, but
Well,
that's our
unfortunately,
process.
when they did mine, I still got water 3 years later popping up on the street.
Oh, you don't even know the half of it.
Yeah, so thank God if you guys want to do it, this is great.
Okay. Any other questions by the board? Anybody from the public on this one?
Should we get these
sorry.
people to come up?
Well, let's find out what the question is. What's the question, sir?
Right here?
Right there.
Right, so the 803 actually includes an inspector crew day pay item. So some of the inspection cost is included in the bid, but we back that out. On that table, we back it out, and then you see it in the field inspection as a separate line item. So it's just a matter of we break it. Right, so we add in a little bit of a contingency into the overall price.
It's engineering math.
Right.
They're worse
One
than lawyers.
difference, and it's a contingency in the overall amount.
Okay. All right, real quick
we got-
question.
yeah, one more.
We should probably have people come up, but we're
Yeah.
trying to be flexible, so what's the question real quick?
I would say sometime mid-spring likely. I would say May or June would be the start. We want to make sure the weather is good, solid, kind of get out of the rainy season and then get the project going.
George, does that work with General Drive's timing too then?
It does. I would anticipate General Drive may start a little earlier, and then they'll start to, they'll do some of probably the removals on General Drive, then send that crew over, start Litchfield. They want to kind of stage it that way.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Very good. I need a motion.
Mr. Supervisor,
Clerk.
I move to adopt Resolution 2020-01-28-09, authorizing the award of the contract for the Litchfield Drive SAD Road Reconstruction Project to Mark Anthony Contracting, Inc., in the amount of $803,796.68, contingent upon passage of the hearing of assessment, subject to the 30-day appeal process.
Motion's made by Clerk Vorba. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Heitman. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Clerk Borba, yes. Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yep.
Supervisor Heising.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And for the Litchfield folks, you can certainly stick around if you want, but otherwise, we'd love it if you would stay.
Go see the police
we
and
get
fire.
we get awfully lonely here.
Yeah. Yeah, Kurt can clear a room, can he?
Room is getting thinner and thinner.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on now to item F4. This is the DPW land purchase agreement extension. I think Mr. Gonzalez should come forward. I am seeking your concurrence in the attached real estate purchase agreement amendment with Phoenix Management Holdings. This concerns the two surplus parcels at the DPW yard. And this is where we have some discrepancy with the amendment or the addendum, because according to my records, this board approved the original agreement on December 17th of 2018. And the agreement for some reason says May 22nd, 2019. I don't know where that date came from.
I've gone through my emails and through the board minutes, and you're right, the board did give the supervisor the power to enter into the purchase agreement in December of 2018. However, the resolution was contingent upon surveys and accurate legal descriptions. The last email I got on this from Dave Richmond was April 30th of 2019, indicating that the surveys were accurate and the legal descriptions were good, and then those were inserted into the purchase agreement.
Okay.
So that might explain the delay.
Well, if you feel that there's some amendment or change or that you need to make on the fly tonight, feel free. But I just wanted to clarify that. And I know Mr. Kermy had a question about that too, and it didn't make sense to me either. So anyway, what we're looking for tonight is an extension to this agreement that would go to August 31st. That's very generous. I would like this to be done much sooner. But this would allow them to complete their engineering, environmental, wetland, legal, and other due diligence items, which they have been working on for the past year at their own expense. Mr. Gonzalez submitted a letter tonight. I think he's spent about $10,000 so far on all of the due diligence work that has been required for this site. It is a challenging site. One of the sites, which I'll refer to as the southeast site, is mostly wetland and it's a low area. The other site to the west of the existing DPW building is has more of a grade to it and may require more extensive earth moving than we had anticipated. You may recall that the purchase agreement, if it turns into a bona fide land contract, would be in the amount of $425,000. So this is a very worthwhile undertaking for the township. It would put money in our pockets, which we could use on other worthwhile projects here in the township. Basically, I've got Mr. Gonzalez here tonight to answer any questions that you may have. And again, I'd encourage a yes vote on this item. And I would encourage Mr. Gonzalez to get this done as soon as possible. We have not been perfect in this either. I think our former city and township engineer may have let some things lag during the summer of 2019 and maybe was not as responsive as he should have been. But Jeremy has been very much on the ball on this project. So I'll open it up for questions from the board for Mr. Gonzalez. Or you want to make a statement?
No.
Just have him hold it.
Just hold it up.
Just hold it
Hold,
up.
hold it up.
Just hold it up.
Members of trustees, Leo Gonzalez of 10741 Fellows Hill Drive, Plymouth Township, Michigan. I want to start by making sure that everybody has the letter that we prepared, as well as the supporting site plan.
Site?
Yeah, there's a map attached.
Oh, the map is the site plan.
Yeah.
All right.
Does everybody have the site plan?
Yep.
Okay.
Concept plan is the title at the top, right?
Concept plan, that's correct. So, a little background on this site. And we spell it out more specifically through the letter. But, you know, when we first kind of led off onto this path of identifying buildable parcels within this property, you know, we knew we had a fair amount of wetlands on the southeast corner of this property. We knew we had a stormwater that was under the old regulations, so it just sheet drains into a lower area of the property, which you know, certainly serves as a purpose for the wetlands, but you know, adds another level of complexity when we go back to the county in the future to show them our future stormwater management for this property. So one of the first tasks we did was get out there and do a survey on 1 foot grades, because we really needed to understand where the topography was going out there. You had some good old information, but needed to kind of update what we had, or at least what was the current conditions out there. And then, you know, as we dug into this further, you know, we realized we've had these significant grade differences, especially on the west side, to the tune of, in some areas, almost 14, 15 feet. So at best in the future, what we anticipate we're going to have to do is create a building that is one of its walls are almost into the earth by almost 16 feet. Serves as a dual purpose of being able also as a retaining wall. Because we're a little bit constrained over there, because of course we want to create some access points and create some residual parking for the DPW. So it's a coordination of also whatever we do on the east and west side of this property. We've got to have a functional DPW building with parking and access, and we certainly don't want to compromise that. Having said that, as we looked at this further, you know, access becomes even a more challenging part of this, because we're forcing customers to come in the DPW's buildings, access points, to utilize these buildings. So further, as we get into this, we're going to look at buying the right-of-way piece up in the northwest corner of this property for future access. We think this will solve our access problem. It'll add some additional parking to this property. It will just overall give us a little bit better circulation. So that takes care of sort of the west side, notwithstanding all
And that northwest corner is owned by Wayne County.
It is, right. So we need to negotiate that because it just, you can see the configuration of the access points to these respective buildings right now. You know, it works for turning radiuses. My engineer tells me that we'll be able to get trucks in here. He shows queue lines. But I know at the end of the day, if I'm going to secure a tenant on the west side of this property, 26,000 square foot research and development type tenant, they're going to want a more prominent entrance.
So what happened? So sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
Talk a little bit more about that county right away. So what does that mean, and what happens if you don't get it?
What it means is we're going to have to purchase that from Wayne County. It's not under your jurisdiction. We've had some preliminary discussions early on in this project. We decided to put it on hold to see if we could work within the limits of the property that we had. Obviously, we don't want to take in any more property than we needed to. But as certainly sometimes these projects unfold and you find out the topography issues, notwithstanding utilities. So we've got utility lines and water and sanitary lines that need to be relocated. And then, of course, the issue of stormwater. You got to manage the stormwater on site. Now it becomes a little bit more apparent as we're further into this. This will have a more useful purpose. I'm hoping that Wayne County will consider it. It's right away that we feel that they probably just assumed when this overall park was done. It was a leftover, I would call it, it's fair to say that this space, that irregular space of about 0.9 tenths of an acre is not buildable on its own.
So does that make the project non-viable if you don't get it? I don't know if non-viable is a word. Does it make it non-feasible?
I would say that it makes the selection of tenants limited because there's a certain tenant that's going to want that prominent entrance. Now, there are many circumstances throughout the township where you have single access points or dual access points that serve multiple buildings of industrial park. It's not an unusual common planning and day-to-day operation. However, we kind of like that prospect of, hey, we want the option, I would say, that if we can get a more prominent tenant that has, first of all, more employees, that likely to have more employees if it's a flex use or if it's a research and development. So this serves a couple purposes. It gives us a better access point. It also adds some more parking. We think we are short on parking here if we were to go with a flex tenant space. So to answer your question, yeah, there are likely some tenants we will lose by not having that access point.
Okay, so that answered. So you know, who's we? Who are you? Talk to me about your organization.
So the partnership this is myself and Ned Jawash. Okay.
The county is aware of this parcel, of this northwest corner. We've talked in the past with Wayne County Economic Development. It's of no value to them. And I know the county is looking to sell property, and I believe has already sold some property out at on Sheldon Road there, next to the right just south of the overpass, Plymouth Oaks, and they did that with no opposition from us. So, you know, for a very good price. We work well with the county on these issues. I cannot imagine that they would try to unreasonably withhold our our need for that parcel. It's of no use to them right now. It's really the old dead end of Port Street from when the original commercial subdivision was laid down. So Commissioner Daub is here tonight, so she's taking furious notes, and I know that she will put a good word in for us.
So what does this board plan to do with the money?
Oh, Bob, we don't know that yet. It's $425,000. It goes into the general fund. I mean, I'm not going to spend it until we have it.
What will, I mean, you've been working on this for roughly 9 months. What's going to happen in the next 8 months that hasn't been able to happen in the previous 9 months?
So this is for an extension of 6 months. What we will achieve in the next 6 months will determine what Wayne County's position is on our stormwater management plan. We will determine another matter that was noted in the letter. We'll determine if Detroit Edison will work with us. Because when this property was originally built, they put the power lines set off of the property line approximately 15 feet. So we'll determine. I've already had some discussions with the people of Detroit Edison on what our steps are to take to move those poles. Because as you can see, those poles run through the building. I shouldn't say run through the building, run above the building. Now, Edison does give easements for roadways underneath power lines. They don't always give easements for buildings underneath the power lines. So that might constrict that building a bit. We're going to ask the question and see if we can't further that discussion. We'll certainly explore the access point to the west and the viability of getting Wayne County buy-in on selling that parcel to us. So that's what we anticipate we can accomplish here in the next 6 months. Notwithstanding that, we've got a plan, a full set of utility plans here, sanitary and water. We have to relocate some of the sanitary lines and some of the water lines that service this property. Let me kind of summarize why I think a lot of these problems exist. This property, in my conclusion of looking at how it was designed, was never intended to utilize, it was only intended to be utilized by this 13-acre parcel. It was never intended for somebody to come in after the fact and say, I'm going to try to make pieces out of these other remainders. So that's why it was developed the way it was. Building was put in the middle. The utility lines ran where they ran because there was no other prospect, at least at that point, I'm assuming, that they would ever sell off any additional property. So we're kind of coming in the stage at this point and kind of designing something that was probably really not intended for this property, trying to yield some value out of this property for the township. So, it is not an atypical space. Typically you've got a property that doesn't have buildings on it. Most of your industrial property that you see are ground up stuff. They start off with a clean sheet and they work from there. This is just a unique circumstance, and that has caused many delays. By example, we started off with a 35,000 square foot building on the west here. Now it's a 26,000 square foot. So a lot of these assumptions we made, and you don't know that until, you can make some assumptions, but then you got to back it up with the engineering. Hey, do I have the utilities? Do I have the topography? Do I have the grading? You're managing grades of where water flows and so forth. So all these factors go into when you're developing this piece, and this is just one of those that have more factors than others that's caused the delays, and certainly will still be a challenging part of this process going forward. But we're committed to work through this. I've worked on more challenging sites than this in the past, and we'd like to see this thing through and get some results and get some return for our time and money on this as well. This is this is paramount to us getting involved in this. We've got to be able to realize, kind of figure out all the problems here so we can get a return on this.
So the reason I asked my question, and I've raised this issue before, is that I'm not generally in favor of trading appreciable assets to cover operating costs. I just think it's a bad practice and it's not sustainable.
I have a question about the concept plan, if we could turn to that. Maybe I misunderstood something you said in your presentation, but when I look at this, I see 43 spaces that are connected to the DPS building.
There are 43 spaces. There's a total of, no, there's got to be more. There's 43 spaces there. You can count them up.
Well, I'm not going to count them up. I'm assuming there's 43.
Right.
And then there's 62 for the other part of the parking on the west side.
Correct.
So that's 100. Is that all for this 26,000 square foot building?
Well, we want it, so the DPW still has about 4,000 square feet of office space here. And although it's not utilized, at some point it can be utilized in the future and it needs to be parked. So, our thought is you'd have to have at minimum of 20 parking spots for that building, using a 1 per every 200 square foot ratio. So, we're parked. We've got ample parking here as we're estimating here, but we're not done with the grades here.
I understand.
I think some of this stuff is going to get kicked out because when we start bringing the grades of the parking lots together, I'm not going to have as much as I think.
But this is
started
your
off with.
concept plan.
I know that, but
So, well, are you disowning it now?
it starts off as a concept plan.
Well,
But I'm going to tell you my experience is you start digging into the grades and then you start figuring out how you're going to feather these parking lots in, you can end up losing some parking spots.
Yeah, I'm not in any way, shape, or form trying to suggest something improper or anything. I'm just trying to clarify. The 43 and the 100 and the 62, are those because of the new building, the 26,000 square foot building? Is that what's necessary, or are those spots for DPS purposes? I guess I don't understand.
Both. So certain amount of those, we're going to have an easement agreement that allows, because these parking lots are blended together as well as the access points at this point. So the DPW will retain a sufficient amount of parking to make sure that the building itself is self-parked, as I refer to it. And then we'll have the remaining parking lot is intended to be used for this building. Now, let me answer the question regarding use. If I get an industrial use, it is more in the line of manufacturing, then I'm not going to need this much parking. But if I get a use that is more in line with research and development, a flex space that has a pretty good clean area of many people that are working back in the shop space, if you would, then it's likely we'll need these parking spots. So I guess it comes down to, yeah, this is probably the high watermark on the parking, but the market will tell us, depending upon the uses and what are my final layout for the cut and fill and grading will determine the final parking spots.
So to clarify, no one has put a shovel in the ground or moved any dirt related to this project whatsoever?
No,
Okay.
nothing but field work.
No field work, okay. Just for us to determine what is doable, what's buildable at this site. Okay.
We have a factor, too, that we haven't brought up yet. We've got it seems to be a waste area that's been dumped.
Yeah.
Debris has been dumped there for years and years and years that's accumulated along this west side.
Yeah.
We need to get a handle on of, if it's, we know it's debris, just need to kind of understand how much of it is.
Is this from the parking lot
It's from the parking lot.
in the township park?
Yeah.
That was talked about last
Yeah.
time? Okay.
Now, I don't exactly know the boundaries of this pile of dirt and debris. I know the DPW, we have budgeted again for this calendar year, I believe it's $80,000 for cleanup and regrading of the DPW yard, the gravel yard in the back. Some of that's being mandated, frankly, by Eagle because it's not up to snuff with modern stormwater standards. We've basically held them off because we've been telling them that there may be work going on around the site. I'm not saying that money is going to go towards removing that whole dirt pile. If you buy this, if this deal goes forward, then I think you're going to be responsible for removing most, if not all, of that dirt pile. It just depends on how it cuts through the boundaries.
So what do you guys think?
Well, hold on. Let's have some questions here.
I'm asking the board.
Okay, well, that's my job. Okay? We're doing questions of.
Okay, can you ask those guys what they think?
Well, we're asking questions.
mind
I'm not
asking them what they
polling.
think?
I'm not going to poll the board. Okay, we're not doing pre-votes here or round robins.
I'm curious to know.
Does
what
anybody
their
have any
feelings are.
questions
Yes,
for
I have
the applicant?
more questions.
Thank you, Chuck.
Lord help me.
There's only two people with financial interest in this Phoenix LLC. Is that correct?
That's
Leo?
correct. Well, currently, Phoenix Management, if you look it up, I am the only one who has interest in that company. The intent would, in the process, the other partner, Ned Jawash, and I will create a operating agreement, and he'll become a member of that LLC.
Okay, so Ned and you have paid all of your property tax and water bills that are due, and there's another round due in 2 weeks.
So-
Taxes are due in 2 weeks.
Uh,
So do you
so
intend to have your taxes paid on February 14th?
I received a list of properties that were outstanding for Ned, forwarded on to him. You know, I'm sure he's taken up to the February 14th to pay those. And reminded him that, you know, you should pay him on or before February 14th.
Because really, it's only 2 weeks away, and this is a business deal, so there's not any legal roadblock to doing what you're doing. When you do a business deal, you can ask for leverage wherever you need it. So that's the leverage that I want to see, is that everything's paid, water bills, because Ned has a reputation for not paying or stringing things out for a long time.
And not keeping his word.
That's even worse. So that's one thing I would like to see happen, that the signing of this would be delayed till February 15th. The other thing is...
But let me interrupt. I mean, and let me ask Mark this question. Even if he's not paid on February 15th, that's not illegal, right? I mean, he can still, he can string that along with the county, and businesses do that all the time. Is that
Right, but he
fair?
won't be
statement?
able to do it.
So in terms of the dates, you pay by February 14th without any interest and penalty. You have up until this year, because it's a leap year, February 29th, where you pay an additional 3%. And then after March 1st, it'll go delinquent and go to Wayne County. Now, do businesses do that all the time? No, because we have a delinquency rate of less than 1.5%. So 98.5% of the people pay their taxes on time.
But they can't.
Pardon?
But they can't.
But they can go delinquent? I'm not sure what you're saying.
No, they cannot pay their taxes, and they have 2
Right,
years.
but this is a business deal. You can say, you can make up rules any way you want.
I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying people can and do let their taxes go delinquent
Sure.
because they view it as a loan without having to
Right.
go to a bank. And so
Exactly.
it's a common practice, may not be common in Plymouth Township, but it's common throughout the,
That was my point. When you say common, it's less than 1.5%.
yes, in Plymouth Township. Yeah.
So I'd like to see everything paid on time. Penalties don't have anything to do with it. This is the leverage, leverage we're applying for a business deal. February 14th, pay the taxes. The other item is this land will have been held up. I know we didn't put it up for sale or list it, but it will be held off the market for a year and a half with no consideration. I don't think there is no earnest money. You didn't buy an option, nothing. So usually when you have that, that's another leverage point. It makes people work faster because they got some skin in the game. Now, I know you have some skin in the game because you've expended $10,000, and I don't know how much Plymouth Township has expended in engineering. Does anybody know?
Not that much. I mean,
You mean 5,000?
Spalding, it's got to be less than that.
I don't know.
They've reviewed some of these plans and answered some questions.
But we should, this is the opportunity to get what you want, is when you're selling
Yes.
property. And it's a negotiated business deal. You're an expert at this, Leo. I know you are.
Particularly with some of the history.
So anyway, those are my 2 cents on that. That's what if it was my money, I wouldn't leave my land tied up for a year and a half with no earnest money or no option.
And let me just remind everybody that on February 11th, because we have to be careful about precedent setting here, we do have the courthouse grill site is coming to us for an extension of their PUD agreement, which is going to have its own host of issues. So we're making sure that they've paid all their fees and everything as well. And so let's make sure that that line of questioning is applied also in the
No,
future.
you can't really. You can only do what's legal for that. That's planning. This is a business deal, a sale.
Well,
That's a
PUD
planning
is a
thing. That's
contract. PUD is a contract as well. So I'm just throwing that out there.
This is different
about.
because we're selling our assets. So we're not giving somebody an approval for on a planning commission or a PUD. We have a full right to, in a negotiation, to request. You can request anything, and then the other party has to decide whether it wants to agree to it. So I don't want to confuse it with, this is not a lawyer issue like with PUD, there's certain limits of what you can leverage.
Well, if we're going to talk about taxes and fees and things that have to be paid, then they are comparable in this case. So
Another
right.
question, which is, why was the termination effectuated in December? Other mic.
No, the other mic.
Under the agreement, as most of you have, or probably have read, we only had a certain amount of due diligence period. And I didn't want to be in default of that agreement, so we needed to notify the seller, in this case, as it is always on the notifications, that we were terminating. We extended the opportunity within that termination to extend it, but that's under your discretion. There was an earnest money, and still is an earnest money, as a point of clarification, that was put in.
not?
There is an earnest money. It's when you looked in the purchase
The
agreement.
$5,000, but
Right.
that happens.
But that's an earnest. It's an earnest
But
money
you don't have
deposit.
that on the table yet. That you have to. Something has to happen before you give us the 5,000.
It deposit.
You haven't done that.
No. In the agreement, it says we deposit in the title company. Upon execution, we deposit it.
How much was that?
5,000.
5,000. But I thought that we had to. There was a. Okay, let's look it up here. I have the old agreement here. From
Well, once it reverts to a land contract, I think it's 50 or 90,000. 90,000
There's an
down.
additional money that's paid, and the
Yeah.
deposits credited
And then
towards
the
that.
land contract is paid off over, I believe, 5 years?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And that can be accelerated too, I believe.
Right. And
Okay,
we've always said it would, depending upon our financing.
in section 2, it says upon execution of the purchase agreement, the buyer agrees to deposit $5,000 with Tri-County title, which shall be refundable subject to the conditions herein. So what triggered the $5,000 deposit of the title company?
We executed the purchase agreement.
Okay, so we have that.
Yeah. No, you had it from, when we executed the purchase agreement, we funded deposit.
But then when it was terminated, did they get their $5,000 back?
We do. We didn't take it back. It's still with the title company. Because under their agreement, it says upon termination of agreement, so long as we're not in default, then the deposit comes back to us. Therein lies the reason that you want to be timely on your notifications. We didn't have any more time than the contract allowed us to have.
But why didn't you come to the board instead of terminating and then coming and asking for an extension? Why didn't you just come to the board and ask for an extension and not terminate?
He's here.
Hold on now. Under contract law, right, you have to terminate. I can't come here and say I want to terminate verbally. I would have had to come here before it terminated and did a request for it.
Why didn't you do that?
He's here.
In hindsight, we probably should have.
Well, you notified my office.
But I notified timely.
They could have done that, right, Kevin?
Last month.
We
I
would've
administer the contracts for the township, though. He notified me, and he notified me that the contract was terminated. I got him on the agenda as soon as I could.
But I'm saying instead of terminating, why didn't you come in November or October or December and say, look, we just need some more time? Because you terminated, you got your $5,000 back. That's weird.
It was refundable anyways, so long as we terminate timely. And it wasn't our intent. You know, we found out a lot of things about this in October when your new engineer kind of started engaging the review on this, gave us some real good ideas, which I took back to my engineer. So we learned a lot more about this property in the last 60 days. We did. You know, in hindsight, we were going to need more time anyways. We reasonably knew that in October, okay? But I wanted, irrespective of that, we still wanted not to be in default of the contract.
But that was the 210 days?
Correct.
So before I brought this up as a question on December 10th, I don't think Kurt knew you had terminated it. Because what was brought up in that meeting was that we were thinking about, well, then maybe we should extend it. So did it get terminated because we brought it up in the board meeting on December 10th, which was after the 210 days?
As you said, I do this very often. My contract, if it comes up and it's expiring, nobody needs to prompt me to terminate, or nobody needs to prompt me to, it varies by case by case. If I need the extension, I do exactly what I did here. I came back and terminated, and at the same time, I'll ask for an extension in spirit of the fact that I'm working on these details to further this development.
So I realize that this is a difficult piece of property that wouldn't normally be, under normal circumstances, would not be developed.
And I can appreciate your comment. In hindsight, you should have. I mean, that's candid and honest. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So what's your level of confidence in moving forward? There's a lot of ifs and so forth. I mean, based on your experience, do you think this is going to happen? Obviously, you seem to be saying it's worth it for me to pursue for the next several months.
Yeah,
with real activity, right?
Real activity, real money, and time. Time that, we value, anytime we put money and time into a project, sometimes we always view time as worth more. We're careful. I think this is doable. There are still some challenges that we still have to get through. Listen, I'm a big proponent of Plymouth Township, always have been. And if I could take a piece of property that was never intended to be developed and turn these into dollars for the community, I'm going to give every effort that I can do so to create some value. That's what we do as a developer. We take something that's sort of not functional, doesn't kind of fit in the boxes that everybody expects, and turn into something that's purposeful.
And you must think there's...
And not to mention creating businesses and buildings, additional businesses for the community.
And you think there's a market for these two buildings?
I do. I think this is a first-class office park, industrial park, however you want to refer to it as, kind of being used as both. If you look at the sort of the makeup of the tenants over there, I think people that want to be in sort of in this synergy of other buildings, that there'll be a demand for this. Obviously, easy access off to the freeway. We only need a few commitments. We're potentially only talking about one or two companies to fill these two buildings, maybe three, depending upon if we split one of them.
If we can build this, we won't have any problem filling them, based on the interest in property on Port Street as well as what's in the township.
Well, there's vacancies in there.
Yeah,
Now.
they're kind of strange numbers. You
mean the prices are too high?
And the square footage doesn't match the prices. That's bottom line. Prices are definitely too high, but certainly if we can build these, they will come.
Jerry, let me ask you a question as a former real estate expert.
The best.
Oh, geez.
Leo made a comment that was interesting to me. He basically said that these parcels were never intended to be developed. They're surrounding the current DPW building.
Yes.
If at a future point in time we decide that we want to sell the DPW building.
Right.
Is this adding value to that or subtracting value?
Well, again, it would always depend on what the potential use is. You may find a tenant who would be happy to have just the footprint of the building, some parking spaces, depending on what their use is. Other people may say, well, gee, maybe my use is going to be different, and I need some more of that other property for more parking or some other outbuilding that they may build onto that. So you always have that potential. But in this instance, you have really kind of fallow, unusable space unless we were to take the initiative and go and develop it ourselves and try to rent it out. Here you have someone who says, I see a potential, and it's not really providing a function to us right now outside of storing some trash that we threw there. And our particular use is not using up all that extra space. So highest and best use would be if you could develop it and acquire more businesses in the community and increase your tax base. So, but right now it's just fallow. It's not.
The land was originally, when we did our survey work on this and our historical research as part of a potential sale of the DPW building, which is not at issue here. This was basically leftover land that was the dead end of the original corporate subdivision, and it was deeded to Plymouth Township by DeMattia, basically because it was seen as, I don't know if it was considered a gift to the township or it was just undevelopable land that they felt was not worth pursuing, and they figured give it to the township. But as that development increased, as it went further west towards Beck Road and became more usable, now these parcels, despite their challenge, they are challenging parcels. I mean, I'm not going to kid you. There's challenges, and this project may never go anywhere. But it's worth investigating, given the current economic conditions, given the interest that we see every day from companies looking to settle in the township who are looking for modern facilities that would match the types of things that I think that you're looking at. It's worth pursuing and worth looking into. But I mean, we're not. I see this as sort of like this is the last hurrah with this project. I mean, we're either going to. I don't expect any further extensions, I guess is my point. I think we need to either get this over with, move on to the next step, or maybe we just let this thing sit for another 20 years. I don't know. But
or you could list it. You could actually list it.
Well, it was listed before, and Leo was the only guy who put in for it. You know, and if we listed it again, he could put in for it again. He certainly knows the territory now. But anyway.
Who was the listing agent at the time?
Oh, no, we just, we published it. Yeah. We didn't want to get involved with a realtor or anything like that because it's just too expensive and it was our property, so we didn't want to get into it. I don't know if you want to comment on that or not.
Yeah, I do. I have a couple comments. One on market. Yeah, there are some vacancies over there right now, 50, 60,000 square foot buildings. Most of those landlords won't split buildings. The sweet spot, at least what I think is in the market currently here for the next 12 to 18 months, is a 6,000 to 7,000 square foot spaces. You can't get any 6,000 or 7,000 square foot spaces with warehouse in the back. You know, I own 50,000 square feet in the city of Plymouth, and I have no vacancies. You know, and so it's well positioned that you've got these 15,000 square foot building that I could accommodate a couple 5,000 square foot users. The 26,000 square feet, yeah, even somebody who's got a 50 or 60,000, depending upon how it was designed, it may not be feasible to split that. So I'm hoping that with a smaller amount of spaces that we got a wider range of tenants. Is my first comment. You know, so that's the one on market. You know, the things that we've run into, anybody who else who would ever come after us is going to run into the same thing. We all come to these same conclusions. Some of us get there longer, take us longer to get there. Some of us get there a little shorter period. But these are just inherent problems with the property developed. There's certain standards that every community have, every county has, of what you can do with these properties as it relates to stormwater and so forth. So with that said, you know, this is kind of the inherent problems of developing this property. And
so does the engineer have any insights to offer at this point?
Just as far as what's shown on the concept plan, I mean, I worked with him from the beginning, from the original concept plan, and it looks like he's addressed quite a few of our concerns, mainly shifting that building to the north so it's not running underneath that overhead power line, dealing with some of these truck parking areas, retaining those 43 spaces that we were talking about. That's the number of spaces that are at DPW currently, so it's retaining those spaces. And then the additional spaces are for the businesses in the future.
I have one more comment regarding marketing, but more to the DPW, to Trustee Clinton's comment. You know, as part of this deal, you're retaining, the township's retaining almost 1 acre in the rear of this parcel. That can be purposed well for additional parking for anybody that would come, whatever your future is for this building, if it means to go to the open market to sell it. You've got additional land to work with to add additional building and parking. So I think it's still, you're not positioned in such a manner that you don't have some flexibility in the future. And for that fact, now you've got, if everything goes well, you've got 40,000 square feet of buildings with, let's call it $5 million worth of investment flanking both sides of your building. Bring some credibility to the building in the middle. Can't hurt.
Okay, any other questions from the board, from the public? All right, I'm looking for a motion then.
Well, I think perhaps we could move to the next phase.
What's the next phase?
Discussion.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
Board
that's
discussion.
thought that's what we've been doing. Okay. Discuss.
So I have surrendered my bar card, but bad habits are hard to break. So I'd like to answer your question by posing you a question, which is, what would you see as appropriate to use the proceeds of this for? Good, well-stated question, but you get my point.
I guess in general, just as a general principle, when you trade hard assets and you sell those assets, you put the money into the general fund and the money gets spent on operating costs. It's gone. When it's gone, it's gone. I think I've raised those concerns before that anytime we sell real estate, I'd like to have that earmarked for a particular purpose. Now, if you bought a fire engine with it and it's a 30-year asset, maybe you make that argument. But I just hate to see it get sold and then the money is just absorbed and spent somewhere.
So we've got a 10-year contract on a fire truck. If we got this money and then paid that off early, that would be something that would be
might be
a good
use of the money.
We're going to have to.
I'm sorry.
We're going to have to eat the entire golf course debt this year. So this would go a long way to help offset that monetary hit.
But that's OpEx as well. There's nothing capital there.
There's been discussion about capital assets, township capital assets, and having a forward-looking plan to repair, replace, recondition. So that would be an appropriate use in your view?
Yeah, I think
this?
probably. Mm-hmm.
So it's more like
Maintenance,
capital for
building
capital
maintenance
as opposed to capital
I
for...
think that was the original.
OpEx.
I think, Jerry, that was one of the original things we talked
One
about.
of my original ideas was to take this money and then use it for a building fund.
Yeah, capital for capital.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I thought we were going to use it for, originally it was going to be used for a fire truck before we got the Jeff Noble gift.
That was
It might have been used if the millage had failed. The Jeff Noble gift was already in the bag long before the millage came up. If the millage had failed, we probably would be using this to buy critical life-saving equipment.
So I guess to answer your question now, I would agree with your approach. I think if this reaches a conclusion, we do get proceeds, I think earmarking them, setting them aside for these kinds of purposes would be in the public interest, not new suits for the board or...
I could use one.
Well, I wasn't going to comment tonight.
We mean to talk
particularly,
to you about that.
So
Well said.
more long-term use of the funds rather than short-term, they're gone before you know it.
That's what I call a good problem to have. And, if this deal, we are still in the very early stages of this project, and if it works out, I think that would be a great discussion to have, and I would probably want to have Ginger here as well to assist us in that process, because I'm sure there's some accounting issues that she would want us to deal with. Okay, I'm still looking for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor,
Mr. Heitman.
I move to adopt Resolution 2020-01-28-10, authorizing the Township Supervisor and Clerk to sign the real estate purchase agreement amendment with Phoenix Management Holdings, LLC IV, for surplus township parcels located at 46555 Port Street.
So how can we?
Motion's made by trustee Heitman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by clerk Borba. Any discussion?
How can we inject in here the taxes that are due February 14th? I think we should ask for that.
Kevin,
Friendly
I don't know
amendment?
what your recommendation would be on that. Pay your taxes?
Well, no, just don't do the deal unless you pay the taxes. This is contingent upon payment of taxes on February 14th.
The board's options would be to delay the vote or to amend the resolution if the board wishes to make the resolution contingent upon the payment of taxes.
I would like to make, oh, go ahead.
Well, are
Want
we
to do an
talking about,
This extension.
yes, but for Phoenix Management Holdings to have all of its
The
tax?
principles of it, which is Leo Gonzalez and Ned, don't know his last name.
Jawash.
Well, is he a
So-
principal? I thought he
But
was
see,
not.
but he's not part of the contract.
He's
Yeah.
one of the principals.
Yeah, but he's not part of this.
Doesn't matter. You can put anything you want in here. And
Well, I
then
don't
he's got to
know.
go get it done.
Well,
Is that
Like a
lawful?
bill of attainder. This is like impeachment, whatever we want.
He just said he was going to, this deal, when I asked him, he said the two people will be him and Ned. So,
Well,
but
Kevin,
they're
what do
not
you?
parties. You can't. How do you make a non-party?
But he is a party. It's Phoenix Holdings.
But Ned is not part of Phoenix Holding.
I thought he was.
No.
Just
I was asked,
He will.
Phoenix is my entity, and I clarified that Ned will become part of Phoenix Management Holdings, Roman numeral 4, under an operating agreement and partnership agreement.
Chuck, what if we did this? What if we amended the resolution to say that we authorize the township supervisor and clerk to sign this agreement after March 1st, which would still give them 6 months to extend this contract, but would also give the supervisor and clerk information as to whether or not he paid his taxes. Whether they want to sign it at that point is up to them.
yeah.
Are you okay with that?
I'm acceptable to that,
I mean, that way you're not like dead in the water either for a month. You understand that?
by all means. You know,
Kevin, can you make that?
we haven't stopped working on this in the interim
Yeah, I know.
anyway, so
I know.
Yeah,
Kevin?
you would be the one that would control the destiny here.
sure,
All you have to do is pay the taxes, and then the contract would be signed. So
it's
We'll have the
reasonable.
you hold the keys to the jailhouse door.
Jawbone Ned.
I don't know if that one hold the keys to the jailhouse.
Okay, Kevin, you okay with that?
Yes, one thing I think the board should be aware of from a practical standpoint, because right now there is no privity of contract
Right.
between the township and Phoenix Management Holdings. Phoenix Management would not be able to do any work on the property until the extension was signed by both parties.
Okay,
They
well,
could
that'll give
still
even
work
more
on their
incentive for
plan.
them to sign it or get it paid up because they don't want to lose a month. They could lose, well, one, they could, tomorrow, if
You
they
could
paid
pay
their
it.
taxes, they could execute it. So you even have more power.
So you could have it say on or before March 1st.
Well, maybe the date isn't as important as the payment of the taxes.
I know.
I think March 1st was just a placeholder.
Yeah, it
But
was.
it could be on or before. I like that idea. So Kevin, can you work that out?
On or before March 1st
But
contingent.
you're not going to
I don't know how that,
See, that puts an automatic economic incentive for them to not
does.
waste a month.
It does. I totally agree with you.
It's clever.
okay,
It is clever, Chuck. I'm going to give you that one.
He thought.
very clever. Was that Jerry? Were
This
you
is a clever board.
Well, I'm partly clever.
It could have
Too
been
much
a little bit
cleverness
more
here.
clever before I read the damn thing, but that's okay.
Okay, so Kevin, you know what our intent is here on the resolution? I don't know how we incorporate that into a motion. I hope we don't have to. Because if we're referring to the resolution, you're going to draft the resolution, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion does not have to change, I hope?
The motion should
Yes.
change to the extent that it states that just add at the end, provided, however, that this adoption is contingent upon Leo Gonzalez, Phoenix Management, and Ned Joish paying property taxes on or before March
Okay,
1st, 2020.
is that all in the motion?
On all his properties, not just his house or whatever.
All properties within the township.
Yes.
Well, going back to my original my thought was,
That
I don't
was
think we
clever,
have to make
too.
it that, it was me, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
think
you
we
were
have to
clever.
make it that complicated.
Good.
We just have to say that in the resolution that we authorize the supervisor and the clerk to sign on or before March 1st. They'll know whether or not the taxes have been paid, and if they choose to sign without the taxes being paid, shame on them.
I like that. That's clever.
When you say they'll know.
And it's short.
They being Jerry
These two.
and
But I
Kurt.
don't want to be shamed on them. I want to make sure it gets done.
Well, what are
Maybe
we,
I'm not
potted
following.
plants? Come on,
Yeah,
we know what we're doing, you know?
Chopped liver.
All right.
That's not clever. So,
Well,
so
we have an,
I like
we have a
Mark's idea
gentleman's
because it's short.
agreement?
Yes, we do.
So,
We have a gentleman's agreement, because you are a gentleman,
Well, there's no question about that.
all right?
I guess the question then would be
There's not many
whether
of us left.
Mr. Heitman agrees to
Yes.
the amendment proposed by Trustee Clinton, Treasurer Clinton.
so basically the amendment, Gary, is that it's subject to, say that again?
My only
Just says on or
suggestion to the
before
motion
March
would
1st.
say to authorize the township supervisor and clerk to sign on or before March 1st, the real estate
Yeah.
purchase agreement, et cetera.
Yeah, we-
Authorize us, but
Yeah.
we're not going to sign it.
But we know
If
why,
don't.
yeah.
Yeah, because we'll know.
So we have your commitment that that's what you're doing.
That's exactly what.
We're from the government, you can trust us.
Oh, yeah.
Trust us.
That's why we're debating
They're
this.
lawyers, you can trust them because they're lawyers.
And we're lawyers, that's
Oh,
even better.
God.
So does
Okay,
Trustee
so-
Heitman accept this amendment?
Mr. Heitman, are you okay with that amendment?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And who seconded?
Second is okay with
Who
me?
seconded? Jerry did?
Oh, no. Is the second okay with it? Yeah,
Well, no, you're the
You're
second.
the second.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it was a friendly amendment from the clever,
Now, the recording
caucus-
secretary is
clever
probably
caucus
totally
over here.
confused. We need to make sure.
Oh, Alice, don't worry, we'll clean it up for
All
you.
right.
All right, so I guess there's a motion on the table then. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Clerk Borba, yes. Treasurer Clinton,
Yes.
Trustee Kermy,
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey,
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz,
Yes.
Supervisor Heiden.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay,
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
thank you. Next is item F5. This is the 2020-2024 contract with the Dispatcher PSA Union. I have sent you information on this in the past, and the electronic copy is in your agenda pack. This is a 5-year contract, wages at 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.75, and 2.5. A modest increase in the shift differential. Longevity is now available to all employees after 3 years of service. We've created a training officer position. It's a bonus. I shouldn't call it a position. It's a bonus of $500 for dispatchers who serve in this capacity. We're only talking about 1 or 2 people. We've updated the rules for use of overtime that is easier for us, reduces abuse and miscommunication, and rewards seniority. And we've also updated the rules for using employee sick time bank in a manner that's more favorable to management, reducing the risk of abuse. Chief Tidrington, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but this, as I pointed out in earlier emails to the board, this is what I would call a mature contract. We just signed the previous deal about 2 years ago, and this current deal will put us on par with the fact that the other contracts in the township have all been approved at this point. So it's a 5-year deal, which puts them on the same timeline as police and fire.
And it's consistent with the benefits provided to the other collective bargaining
Yeah.
units.
Yeah. But there was some, I didn't understand what the recycle surprise was, where there was some
Yeah.
initial approval and then it was withdrawn temporarily. And
The union
what was
leadership.
the stumbling point?
Sure. The union leadership approved the contract. There was a tentative agreement. That's why they call it tentative. And then the union membership rejected it, but for reasons that really had to deal with explaining the use of sick time, and the chief can elaborate on that.
The union membership agreed to it, as the supervisor said. Once it got back to the membership, there was a lot of questions. We ultimately, after they voted it down, we met with them and we discussed it very completely, and I understood what their concerns were, and we explained it, and they went back and voted.
So it was unchanged from the tentative agreement? Or we made a change after the tentative?
There were some minor changes.
I would call them clarification, just additional language to further clarify, but it doesn't change the substance of the offer and acceptance by management and labor.
What was changed was economical. It was all how we,
Operational, or?
they were operational decisions versus economic.
Use of sick time and sick bank and sick days, use of sick days and then sick bank time and then all of our contracts provide for additional sick leave up to a certain point, and we wanted to clarify. The union misunderstood basically what we were trying to accomplish. The leadership understood it. The rank and file did not. The chief had to tweak the language just so that everybody was on the same page.
And that language you sent to us, right?
That's in your red line copy, which
the red
is
line.
part of your electronic version. We didn't want to kill a forest again. So that's the contract, guys, and appreciate your consideration. One of the things you're going to notice in this motion, this is a request by Ginger, our finance director, that you're going to start seeing in further actions of this type that involve additional money or that contain a dollar amount that was not previously budgeted. We're basically doing budget amendments as needed in each individual resolution rather than going back quarterly and doing a wide variety of budget amendments. So it's not that we're not going to do budget amendments anymore, we will, but wherever she can address it on the spot, she's recommending that we do that.
And this is clean because it's only fiscal year 2020 is affected. Didn't have to go back to 19.
No, because this contract expired on January 1st of this year. So there is going to be some retro pay, but it's not like we've impacted
Not
the
in a different
2019.
fiscal year.
Right. Okay, so comments, questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Clerk.
I move to adopt Resolution 2020-01-28-11, authorizing that the Board of Trustees approve the collective bargaining agreement with the Police Officers Association of Michigan for a term beginning January 1, 2020, and ending December 31st, 2024, and to amendment to the fiscal year 2020 adopted budget by authorizing the finance director to appropriate the general fund balance to the communications wage and other fringe benefit expenditure account in the amount of $26,600 and to authorize the supervisor and clerk to sign same.
Motion's made by Clerk Forva. Is there a second? Second by Trustee
So
Blakeman.
before we vote, would there be any public comments on
I
this?
was just going to get to that.
Good.
So, any public comment? Nope. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yeah.
Supervisor Heide.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman. Clerk Forva, yes. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Next is item F6. This is the appointment of Ms. Colleen Azimi to the Historic District Commission for a term ending June 30th, 2021. She is filling the unexpired term of Jim Salome. Is Colleen still here? Wow, you are a trooper. Come on up. Just come on up, just so we can put a name with a face. We're not too tough. It's not a Senate hearing or anything like that. So, Colleen, we have your resume and we have your bio with us and your application. You look like you're extremely well qualified for this position. And Jack, you're sort of our liaison member to the Historic District Commission. Do you have any words of wisdom or warnings or anything like that?
No warnings. It's been a great experience so far with this just getting underway. So you're coming in fairly early in the process. I assume you know the next meeting date, which is in March. And I guess your interest in this is exemplified by lasting through this meeting for 2 hours and 5 minutes.
Yes.
So I don't want to press the issue.
This is all part of the hazing ritual here, you know that.
Yeah, now you do have to sing your class fight song before we vote. But I would just say, looks great, and welcome, assuming the board approves. So, thank you.
Have you had the chance to meet with Wendy Harless yet, or no? Okay. Well, after tonight, assuming this all goes well, we'll make sure that you two get together before your next meeting.
And then at the next meeting, you will be sworn in officially, okay?
You do understand that you have to remain a resident of Plymouth Township, not Plymouth City.
No.
Even though your mailing address doesn't necessarily determine where you live. Okay.
Okay. Any further questions from the board? Comments or questions from the public? Very good. I need a motion. Jack, would
I'd
you
like
like to do that?
move to adopt Resolution 2020-01-28-12, authorizing the appointment of Ms. Colleen Azimi to the Plymouth Township Historic District Commission for a term ending June 30, 2021.
Motion's made by Trustee Dempsey. Is there a second? Second by Trustee Heitman. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Trustee Kermy.
Yes.
Trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
Trustee Dorchevitz.
Yeah.
Supervisor Heisey.
Yes.
Trustee Heitman.
Yes.
Clerk Borba, yes. Treasurer Clinton.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. Next is item G, supervisor and trustee comments. I just want to give everybody a little calendar update here. We are going to have a study session on February 4th. We have 3 items that night. GIS project update from Jeremy, 2020 sidewalks project update, talk about it. What are we up to? Again with Jeremy, and then we'll have a discussion about a credit policy for septic users. I've told you a little bit about this before, and we'd like to just have more of a detailed discussion on that item.
For what?
Septic users
septic.
for
Septic.
credit.
I didn't hear.
On February 11th, we are also going to have a meeting. We'll start out with the golf course update with Tony Mosconi from the golf course. We have Courthouse Grill. The Courthouse Grill people are coming to us for an extension to their PUD. We have the master deed agreement for Ridge 5 Industrial Park, the Planning Commission annual report, and then a easement vacation request, because even easements need time off too, from time to time.
So
And we are also having a meeting on February 25th. I may have indicated in the past that we weren't, but we've got a pretty full month ahead, and March is going to be consolidated because of the election. And this room is going to be a mess.
So the Courthouse Grill's got a pretty substantial brownfield issue, as I understand.
Well, allegedly, I'm very disappointed that they have not been able to take the building down. We get a lot of complaints about that, and they are now coming back to say that they would like this to be a brownfield site, and they're claiming $2.5 million in costs associated with that. You're still our guy on the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you saw the email that I sent them, but it was pretty rough. And, I don't want to prejudge it too much right now. I want to give them their day in court here. But, at a minimum, I'd really like to see that building go down. I think that would indicate a lot about their intentions there. It doesn't help when I have a for lease sign in front of the building. That's not what we want to see. And we are getting a lot of complaints about it.
Complaints?
Complaints.
There's no neighbors.
Oh, yeah.
Across the street.
Yeah, and there's lots of people that live in that corridor now, and they don't like seeing Courthouse Grill sitting there. So, anyway, just telling you what's going on.
Burroughs sat there, but anyway.
Otherwise, I don't have anything else. Bob?
No.
Gary? Jerry?
I just want to reiterate that on the absentee ballot request form, there are 3 choices. You have to either pick a Republican primary ballot, a Democrat primary ballot, or a ballot with no primary candidates on it, which will have only the school bond and the DIA issue on it. You have to pick one of those. I'm still receiving, probably 20 or so a day that don't have that on there, and I'm having to try to contact people. I don't mind doing the extra work, just that it takes a lot more time for me to get your ballots out in a timely fashion. We'll be mailing out our first batch of ballots, about 4,700 of them, which is already more than we did in 2016.
So you're saying people are reluctant to check the boxes?
I think sometimes people don't want to identify themselves, and you are not being registered as a Republican or a Democrat. We don't do that in Michigan. This is for the purpose of this particular presidential primary. And part of the problem is that it only happens every 4 years, and people misinterpret what's going on. Some people are picking the third choice, thinking they're going, aha, I'm going to not tell Jerry what I'm going to do. And guess what? You won't have a candidate on there, either Republican or Democrat. So please pick one of those items in order for us to get you a ballot. And we did on Friday mail out the military ballots in time, which was due on Saturday.
But isn't it part of the public record as to which ballot you
Yeah,
selected?
that is correct. Someone can FOIA this and see what you picked on that application, because that application is FOIAble. Now, they don't know who inside that group that you voted for.
But it has to be FOIA'd? It is going to be?
It has to be FOIA'd, and in order to get that. And people will FOIA it. You saw we got FOIAs on requesting copies of absentee ballot requests and copies of ballots. So you never know what you're going to get.
Well,
But
political parties will FOIA it so they can do
that's why they do it.
campaigning.
The real reason that you're doing this is because they want to know who you be. They want to try to put you on their mailing list and speak to you. But please, you have to pick one. Otherwise, I've got to call you. And please try to put down at least a phone number. Some people are not putting any contact information down. Then I have to mail you a letter. And then you have to respond to me. You have to email me. You have to call me. My voicemail is getting full every day because people are calling to make that choice. So it just takes a lot of time.
Can we fax it to you?
Please do something. just please pick.
Send you a telegram?
Yeah, a telegraph it will work. Just please pick one. Otherwise, I have to try to get a hold of you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mark?
Just a comment on the ceremony that we had at the beginning of today's meeting, honoring the first responders. I think it's valuable for all of us to every once in a while just take a step back and think about the value that they're providing to our community. I lost count, but I think we were up there somewhere around 5 or 6 lives that were saved over the period of the last 18 months. You can't put value on a human life, but it certainly speaks to the fact of how important and how valuable these first responders are to us. And just every time I hear those types of stories reconfirms, I think, our collective commitment to making this public safety initiative as valuable as possible for Plymouth Township.
Jeremy, for the sidewalks, I'd like you to prepare something that is easily seen from the projection screen so that we can have a rational discussion and not be stumbling around trying to describe things that are difficult to describe by words.
Yeah,
It's got to be big enough, detailed enough. Don't know how to do that, but with GIS or whatever, maybe you can.
Yeah, we've got a live presentation that I'm putting together with some Google Earth that you can really drop pinpoints and show pictures of the sidewalk repairs that we're doing, and it shows the sidewalk gaps, McClumpha, all that stuff. So.
It's a good first use of our GIS system, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Anything else, Chuck?
No.
Okay. Okay, public comments and questions? Hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Supervisor, I move we adjourn at 9:14 p.m.
Motion's made by Trustee Heitman, seconded by Clerk Vorba. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.